Liu Cixin is a Chinese science fiction writer with an engineering background. He was born shortly before the notorious Cultural Revolution, when outright chaos reigned in China under the leadership of Mao Zedong. Liu Cixin's parents, who belonged to the intellectual stratum of Chinese society, were forced to hide their son in a village. They hoped that there the boy would avoid the repressions to which scientists and other educated people were subjected everywhere. This is probably why the first book of the trilogy, Remembrance of Earth's Past, contains such vivid depictions of the era of proletarian hysteria in China. Liu Cixin addresses ideas that are far from new in his books: confrontation between civilizations at different levels of development, the struggle for survival, loyalty to one's own race, and betrayal of one's biological species. All of this is wrapped in quasi-scientific theories. Still, a small amount of real research results is added as well. We will not judge the author too harshly for deviating from the genre of hard science fiction. It seems that philosophical and existential problems concern Liu Cixin far more than strict scientific accuracy. So let's see what came of it. The main heroine of the first part of the three-body problem, Wenjie, was born in 1943 into a family of scholars. Her parents belonged to the upper strata of the Chinese intelligentsia, and both her father and mother taught at a university in Beijing. Following in her father's footsteps, Wenjie grew up and took up astrophysics. Her article, The Possible Existence of Phase Boundaries in the Zone of Solar Radiation and Their Reflective Characteristics, was published in the Journal of Astrophysics in 1966. It would seem that new prospects were opening up for the talented Chinese woman. But alas, that same year, the People's Republic of China was swept by a wave of outright hysteria. It was called the Cultural Revolution. Under slogans produced in huge numbers by Chairman Mao Zedong, the Chinese proletarian youth rushed to smash schools, universities, and cultural institutions. Squads of deranged Red Guards appeared, young followers of Mao, through whose hands the leaders of the People's Republic of China destroyed even the smallest remnants of common sense. Monks, artists, engineers, school teachers, and world-renowned scientists alike fell under the blows. It was into this ideological meat grinder that Wenjie's family was thrown. The first to lose her life was her youngest sister, Wenshu. The 15-year-old girl joined the Red Guards and died during an armed clash between two factions that interpreted the leader's calls in different ways. In the meantime, the youngster managed to do considerable damage to her family by writing several denunciations against her father, mother, and sister. As a result of this betrayal by the youngest daughter, the head of the family, Ye Zhetai, was beaten to death by 4 Red Guard girls. This happened in 1967 during one of the many struggle sessions, where teenagers intoxicated by a sense of their own importance forced adults to confess and repent. The death of her father and the insanity of her broken mother were etched forever into Wenjie's memory and became the direct cause of the events that followed. Naturally, Wenjie herself, as the daughter of reactionaries, chose to join labor detachments, felling forests near the border between China and Mongolia. Mao Zedong was preparing for a war with the Soviet Union. There, living as a person deemed unworthy of trust, the heroine hid from the world and from herself. However, not everyone is capable of enduring solitude. A well-known reporter drew Wenjie out of her shell with progressive ideas and kind treatment. But as soon as the woman opened up, the new acquaintance betrayed her without batting an eye. By then, the security services would no longer have left Ye alone, and it is quite possible that the year 1969 would have been the last of her life. But fate once again turned another side toward the scientist. Her publication was remembered by the engineer Yang Weining, who worked on the secret project Red Coast. The complex on-radar peak became a new home for the homeless woman who had no choice. For 2 years, Wenjie worked with a powerful transmitter, having no idea what it had been created for. Gradually, she managed to gain the trust of the base leadership and learned the true purpose of the facility on Radar Peak. There, the Chinese were trying to establish contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, but so far all their efforts had been in vain. After conducting her own research, Ye found a way to send a signal over a great distance. The leadership did not grant permission for the test. But was that really an obstacle? Wenjie sent the signal on her own, using the method she had discovered. Winners are not judged? Yes. For a time. They are married off. And in 1973, Yang Weining married Ye Wenjie. It cost him the post of chief engineer of the base. But are such trifles worth a great and bright love? It depends. It depends. On the 21st of October, 1979, a reply arrived from deep space. A certain listener desperately begged the people of Earth not to respond to his message. The dying world in which he lived was already preparing to rush out and conquer new living space. That day turned Ye Wenjie into a traitor to humanity. After reflecting on the warning, the woman sent a reply. It seemed to her that the extraterrestrial race would bring order to Earth and to human minds. Ye's actions did not go unnoticed. The political commissar of Red Coast intercepted the transmission. Only out of warm feelings toward Yang Weining did he refrain from handing the pregnant Wenjie over to justice. In gratitude for this, he received death. Along with him, the beloved wife sent Yang Weining to the other world as well. Isolated on the secret base, not all the staff knew that calmer times had come to replace the Cultural Revolution. Only when people began arriving from neighboring villages did the heroine learn that the world around her had changed. In one of these villages in 1980, Ye Wenjie's daughter, Yang Dong, was born. Kind people took to the pregnant woman and helped her at first. Unfortunately, this did not change the scientists' attitude toward the human race. 2 years later, Ye Wenjie left to teach physics at Tsinghua University, where her father had once been killed by the Red Guards. Around this time, she met Mike Evans, the son of an American millionaire. At first, he seemed to be merely one of the environmental activists. But in 1985, Ye Wenjie told him about the contact with the Trisolarans, inhabitants of the Alpha Centauri system. It then became clear that the ranks of humanity haters had grown. Project Red Coast was shut down in 1987, and the base was disbanded and dismantled brick by brick. But for those devoted to the idea of summoning aliens from space, this old base was no longer needed. Just 1 year later, Mike Evans creates his own Red Coast. His brainchild is located on a converted oil tanker and roams the Atlantic Ocean. The traders to humanity receive information from Trisolaris, the planet with which Ye Wenjie was the first to make contact. They create an organization, Earth-Trisolaris, or ETO, whose purpose is to ensure the enslavement of Earth by aliens. What is most unpleasant for Earthlings is that the members of this organization are mostly people of science and culture, as well as influential and powerful individuals from different countries. Ye Wenjie becomes the commander of the ETO, but her position is purely nominal. In the year 2002, the Chinese scientist retires, and the narrative shifts to a new era and new characters. Wang Miao is not a theorist. His field of science, though applied, is entirely real. Wang works on the development of nanomaterials. They are needed for a particle accelerator, but not only for that. They are also planned to be used in the construction of a space elevator, intended to significantly reduce the cost of delivering necessary materials into orbit. Humanity is striving towards space, even though it does not yet understand why it needs it. Earthly science is developing at a frantic pace, and it would seem that the future from numerous science fiction novels is just around the corner. However, strange things suddenly begin to happen on Earth. A wave of inexplicable suicides of theoretical physicists sweeps across the world, as well as other scientists responsible for advancing fundamental science. But what does nanotechnology have to do with it? The stream of events pulls Wang Miao in around the year 2007. A scientist fond of photography, he notices numbers resembling a countdown in his photographs. Thoroughly frightened but not paralyzed by fear, Wang Miao tries to understand what is happening and finds himself right in the thick of events. At some point, fate brings him together with Ye Wenjie, who plays the role of a kind grandmother, and with other members of the ETO. Naturally, no one tells Wang the whole truth. But for an inquisitive mind, there are no insurmountable boundaries. Trying to make sense of the situation, Wang Miao begins playing a video game called The Three-Body Problem. In a bleak world with chaotic climate changes, civilizations of intelligent beings perish again and again. Players are invited to figure out for themselves why this happens, perhaps even to find a solution to the problem. Wang Miao manages to understand why the situation on the planet is so unstable. But it was not he who proved that it cannot be fixed. Nevertheless, moving from level to level, Wang Miao becomes drawn to the ETO and realizes that the three-body problem is not a game at all. The notorious game merely modeled the real state of affairs in a world ancient compared to Earth, a world now standing on the brink of destruction. A planet in a triple-star system, purely in theory, simply could not have given rise to life. But the universe is omnipotent. Time and again changes in the positions of the stars relative to the planet and to each other wipe out civilization after civilization. However, intelligent beings adapted to such conditions turn out to be remarkably resilient. Each civilization advances at least a little in science and technology, and the beings inhabiting the planet are true long livers compared to Earthlings. Eventually, the scientists of 192 civilizations come to the conclusion that the problem of survival on their planet is unsolvable. Moreover, due to the peculiarities of the gravitational field of the triple-star system, the planet faces inevitable destruction. It will be consumed by its luminaries, just like its 11 predecessors. All subsequent civilizations that manage to reach certain heights in science and technology turn their gaze outward. They decided to find a suitable planet and evacuate from their doomed world. And it is precisely at this moment that the call from Earth sent by the embittered Wenjie reaches Trisolaris. What is the construction of a stellar fleet for a highly developed civilization? A mere trifle. Will it take a long time to fly? No problem. Trisolarans, unless some extraordinary catastrophe occurs, live for a very long time. The planet is inhabited by some kind of bugs? Never mind, we'll sweep them away. Who are they compared to us? Alas, the ETO not only transmitted important information to Trisolaris, they also made it clear to the invaders that science on Earth was developing at a rapid pace. And that meant that in 400 years, when the Trisolarans arrive on Earth, the bugs might well grow into something dangerous. Well then, for an alien invasion, a fifth column has successfully grown on Earth. Now Trisolaris merely needs to tell its henchmen what must be done. It must be said that no matter how influential the members of the ETO were, without the help of their alien masters, they would not have been able to stop scientific and technological progress. Mike Evans, obsessed with hatred for humanity, requested technological assistance from Trisolaris. The entire problem of communication lay in the fact that messages exchanged between the ETO and the aliens traveled only one way for Earth 8 years. Naturally, the invaders were not pleased with this either. Therefore, with their highly advanced technology, the Trisolarans found a solution: processing knowledge about elementary particles inaccessible to Earth. The Trisolarans created sophons. They made them from protons, which they learned through trial and error to unfold into different numbers of dimensions. To a real physicist, all this might seem like nonsense, and to an ordinary person like something overly abstruse. Therefore, we will not describe the process in detail. The fact remains that in the end, the ETO, in the person of Evans, obtained what it wanted. On Earth, sophons blocked the possibility of progress in the fundamental sciences, thereby practically halting advancement. And Mike Evans gained a means of rapid communication with Trisolaris. And it was at this point the problems began for the apostates. A split occurred within the ranks of the ETO. The most ardent haters under Evans' leadership called themselves Adventists. These people made every effort to carry out the aliens' orders and bring about the destruction of the human race as a whole. The Redemptionists worshipped the Trisolarans like gods and were convinced that the arrival of the invaders would correct humanity. There were also the survivalists who hoped, at the cost of betraying their own species, to buy their lives from the aliens. From a certain moment on, Trisolaris communicated only with Evans and his radical group. This displeased the other members of the ETO, including Wenjie, who was essentially a redemptionist. Because of the activities of the sophons, her own daughter, Yang Dong, committed suicide. And of course, the security services were not asleep. It would have been strange to think that Wenjie had once managed to completely erase the traces of her subversive activities. Wang Miao became one of the main participants in exposing the ETO network. He was, as it were, planted inside it, although it seemed that he was being used in the dark. But it was Wang Miao who reported the location of the ETO gathering to a specially organized agency. The most interesting thing is that at the moment of arrest at the ETO meeting, these traitors to humanity had already begun tearing at each other's throats themselves. The Sophons' inattention to certain applied fields of science came at a high cost to Trisolaris' collaborators on Earth. Taking advantage of the development that Wang Miao had been working on, Earth's defenders destroyed the heart of the Adventists. The ship, Day of Wrath, where the history of messages from Trisolaris was stored, was cut to pieces by a web of nanofibers. The entire crew of the ship perished, but the data were preserved. They could not, however, be hidden from humanity. Thus, around the year 2009, the entire population of Earth learned about the threat from deep space, the paralysis of science, and the inevitable catastrophe in 450 years. The Sophons seemed to mock humanity, sending messages such as, "You are bugs." This caused many to lose heart, but still not the majority. Already by the end of the book, The Three-Body Problem, an idea surfaces that no matter how humans fight insects, those same bugs, the outcome of this struggle is not on the side of humankind. Primitive insects inhabited the Earth for many millions of years before humans, and in the long run would outlive them. This gave the progressive minds of humanity hope. And meanwhile, the era of crisis began. The Dark Forest is the next book by Liu Cixin. It covers roughly 200 years of human history, oscillating between despair and euphoria and back again. Making mistakes and stumbling along the way, people discover that very dark forest and a way to save themselves from Trisolaris. But let us proceed in order. In the third year of the era of crisis, the Planetary Defense Council launches the odious project known as the Wallfacers. Its principle was based on data once held by Mike Evans. It turned out that the Trisolarans feared humans because they themselves communicated telepathically and were incapable of lying. Thus, the Wallfacer project was founded on deception. Naturally, its participants were allowed to lie to everyone. This was a real way to conceal humanity's plans from the omnipresent Sophons. So the first time a situation arose in which Trisolaris needed the help of human traders. Somehow, the talk about bugs and indifference toward lower beings diminished. Several individuals selected by the United Nations and the Planetary Defense Council began implementing their plans. At the same time, several wall breakers from the ETO set about deciphering their true intentions. Yes, the ETO had been crushed, but humanity is humane. So far from everyone was found and neutralized. Among those chosen for the role of Wallfacers were very different people. The choice of these particular individuals was, in principle, not entirely clear, but a former United States Secretary of Defense, a former president of Venezuela, and a neuroscientist all seemed appropriate. This could not be said of the fourth member of the project, an astronomer who had lost the meaning of life and desired nothing except platonic love for a fictional character. Who could be less suited for the role of savior of humanity? Yet the Planetary Defense Council had its own reasons for this decision. Wenjie, an astronomer and failed writer, was attacked several times by remnants of the ETO. Police officer Shi Qiang, the clever and perceptive main character of the first book, was the first to realize this was no coincidence. The persistent desire of the Trisolarans to kill Wenjie inspired hope. Even before the era of crisis, Wenjie had met Wenjie. Perhaps even then, the commander of the ETO understood that her act at Radar Peak and the subsequent creation of the ETO were the greatest mistakes of her life. Perhaps she was trying to fix at least something by hinting to Wenjie that he should take up a non-existent science, cosmic sociology. At the time, however, this field of study only amused the scientific community. So why did the Sophons awaken from a long silence and order Mike Evans to destroy at all costs an obscure astronomer who had gained a reputation as a charlatan? In any case, the Wallfacer project was launched, and a completely different life began for Wenjie. We remember that the Sophons had blocked the development of fundamental sciences, don't we? Having no idea of the true level of development of Trisolaran civilization, the former minister, the former president, and the neuroscientist armed themselves with what humanity still possessed, and began to devise salvation plans. It took only 5 years for the first wallbreaker from the ETO to fully uncover the plan of the former minister, Tyler. Realizing that his plan was not only ineffective, but would also provoke a storm of hatred against him in society, Frederick Tyler traveled to Luoji and ended his own life there. Luoji himself was struck by tragedy. His beloved wife and young daughter were kidnapped by United Nations agents and forcibly placed into hibernation. The reason was that the Planetary Defense Council realized that Luoji was not doing at all what Earth expected of him. He was simply enjoying a happy life that under other circumstances would never have been available to him. Crushed by grief, Luoji returned to cosmic sociology. In a wave of despair, already prepared to follow, Luoji grasped the principle of the Dark Forest. Cosmic sociology in action. In the universe, there are no friendly civilizations. There are only hunters and prey. The former, more advanced, seek to destroy the latter before they catch up in development and exchange roles. To test his theory, Luoji sends the coordinates of a distant star system with an Earth-like planet into space, just as Wenjie once did. After that, he enters hibernation. The result will have to be awaited for a very long time. In the 12th year of the Era of Crisis, the two other Wallfacers also enter cryogenic sleep. Their projects lack sufficient technological resources. However, Earth did not rely solely on the Wallfacers. All efforts were directed toward extracting the maximum benefit from existing scientific discoveries. A space fleet was created, and at this stage, a clash of big money interests occurred. Manufacturers of rocket engines did not want to lose their positions, and their weight in the industry was very great. However, this equipment had no future, because it was incapable of accelerating spacecraft to the required speeds. At this point, Space Fleet Officer Zhang Beihai entered the game. This man was able to keep his feelings and thoughts secret better than any of the Wallfacers. In the 12th year of the Era of Crisis, he killed 3 of the main lobbyists for the old type of engines in order to clear the way for a new, more promising thermonuclear propulsion system. Interestingly, no one learned of this deed until Zhang Beihai himself confessed to the crime. Until then, like many others, he traveled into the future with the help of hibernation. The 20th year of the Era of Crisis effectively put an end to the Wallfacer project. Manuel Rey Diaz, former president of Venezuela, meets his wallbreaker. His plan is exposed and made public, and once again judged by humanity to be monstrous. The wave of anger that sweeps the world does not spare Diaz's homeland. The president who so sincerely strove for his people is simply stoned to death by that very people. The neuroscientist Heinz finally finds the core of his plan. His work is ostensibly directed against defeatist moods in society. According to his plan, a center of faith is opened where any willing serviceman can receive a mental seal. The world believes it will turn them into triumphalists like Zhang Beihai. Heinz and his wife, Keiko Yamatsuki, enter hibernation. On the very threshold of cold sleep, Keiko realizes her husband's true plan. A terrifying truth emerges. The beloved wife of a Wallfacer is his wall breaker. For now, however, only the reader knows this. Between the 20th and 154th year of the Era of Crisis, humanity plunges into an abyss of chaos and despair. By directing all resources toward building Earth's defense system, people destroy the planet's entire ecosystem. Famine and advancing deserts lead to the Great Ravine. Dark times when Earth's population is reduced by more than half. And in the 154th year, Luoji's spell is triggered. The star system whose coordinates the Wallfacer sent into space is instantly destroyed by an unknown method. However, people learn of the success of the spell only 50 years later. By that time, Heinz and Luoji have already been awake from hibernation for a year. The world that appears before them seems happy. Naive people sincerely believe that the space fleet is sufficiently equipped to defeat the Trisolarans, who are inexorably approaching Earth. The Wallfacer project is practically forgotten and declared foolish. Heinz feels this personally, despite the fact that Keiko revealed his true plan. The world community deemed it insignificant. Keiko commits and Heinz is released to all 4 winds, becoming an ordinary citizen. A very different fate befalls Luoji. Hardly having emerged from cryogenic sleep, the discoverer of the Dark Forest is subjected to several assassination attempts. If not for his old friend Shi Qiang, the history of Earth might have ended much sooner. Meanwhile, Humanity's confidence in victory collapses once again in space. First, Zhang Beihai deserts. After awakening, he is ceremoniously granted enormous authority within the space fleet. Betrayal? Perhaps, to some extent. But, intoxicated by euphoria, humanity sends its entire space fleet to study 2 Trisolaran probes that have already reached the solar system. Needless to say, this rash act costs Earth almost its entire fleet. The probes turn out to be automated weapons capable of wiping humanity from the face of the Earth in a matter of minutes. In the end, Earthlings are left with only a few ships. Natural selection under Zhang Beihai, 5 of his pursuers, and Quantum together with Bronze Age, which managed to survive the battle with the probes. In the Battle of Judgment Day, another important character from the first book, Ding Yi, perishes. In fact, Earth is left with no ships at all. Those who escape destruction decide not to return to their home planet, but to move into deep space. They do not yet know about the Dark Forest, but their crews immediately adopt its rules. In different directions from the solar system, the so-called Battle of Darkness occur. Short engagements between their own ships aimed at seizing resources. In one such battle, the indomitable Zhang Beihai loses his life, failing to activate his weapons in time. Of the 8 surviving human ships, only 2 remain, moving in different directions, and 2 monuments constructed from the hulks of the defeated. The Trisolaran probes reach Earth, and the Sophons shield the sun. And the Wallfacer project is dusted off once more. Earth learns the result of Luoji's transmission, and the Dark Forest theory becomes reality. Luoji works on a strange project called Snow. Dejected humanity once again changes its attitude toward the Wallfacers. Luoji turns from savior into enemy. People blame him for the useless waste of resources and for various other things. But Luoji is truly a real Wallfacer. No one, including Trisolaris, manages to unravel his plan. 3 years later, in the 208th year of the Era of Crisis, the outcast Luoji appears at the graves of Ye Wenjie and Yang Dong and personally reveals his plan to the Sophons. It turns out that the useless Snow is a transmission system to replace the now shielded sun. By threatening to reveal Trisolaris' coordinates to the entire universe, Luoji forces negotiations and averts the threat of planetary conquest. The era of deterrence begins, and the Dark Forest comes to an end. Death's End is the most convoluted of all the books in the trilogy. The twists and turns of humanity's attempt to avoid annihilation reach a peak of absurdity. But once again, let us proceed in order. The very first episode of the book throws us all the way back to the 15th century, to the time of the fall of Constantinople. The Crusaders have thundered into history, and no one will help Byzantium defend itself against the Ottoman invaders. Through foolishness, the emperor misses a chance to change the situation. A certain woman promises to solve the problem through sorcery, but while she is harassed by inspections, the magical power runs dry. The Eastern Roman Empire is doomed. What all this has to do with a book about the future will not become clear for a long time yet. Next comes the story of Yun Tianming, a terminally ill young man. The events unfold at the very beginning of the Era of Crisis, when hibernation has not yet become widespread. Euthanasia, however, has been legalized already. Yun Tianming, whose days are numbered, accidentally becomes rich. Yes, even in this era, there are still honest and loyal friends. Unwilling to leave the sudden fortune to his relatives, the young man spends all the money to buy a distant star and gives it to the woman he loves, Cheng Xin. After that, he goes for euthanasia, but the procedure is interrupted. Yun Tianming's beloved works in the Staircase program. This project is even more odious than the Wallfacer project. Has anyone ever seen such a thing? Sending a capsule with a human brain into space to intercept the Trisolaran fleet. What were those scientists of the Era of Crisis even thinking? The brain for the Staircase, however, was supposed to be voluntarily provided by a terminally ill person. Cheng Xin offers his role to Yun Tianming without realizing how deeply she wounds him with her utilitarian approach. She will regret this idea many times over, but for now the hopelessly in love young man agrees. In the 7th year of the Era of Crisis, it becomes clear that the Staircase program has completely failed. The craft has gone off course. Changjin enters hibernation in order to awaken precisely in the era of deterrence. In the 12th year of the era of deterrence, the two ships that survive the Battle of Judgment Day decide to return to Earth. The first to arrive is Bronze Age, which managed to flee the battlefield with the probes. It then becomes clear that the miraculously surviving astronauts have been cruelly deceived. They were lured home by trickery in order to hold a show trial and punish them for crimes against humanity. Bronze Age falls into the trap, but its captain manages to warn Blue Space, the victor of the Second Battle of Darkness. Blue Space changes course and flees Earth at full thrust. In pursuit, Earth sends its newest ship, Gravity, equipped with a gravitational transmitter, along with true Trisolaran probes. Strange, isn't it? But it is the era of deterrence and humanity that has relaxed once again. Yes, at Luoji's demand, the Sophons lift the blockade from the sun, stop interfering with the development of fundamental science, and the Trisolaran fleet changes course away from the solar system. As a result of negotiations, Trisolaris also shares a significant amount of advanced technology with Earth. A cultural exchange begins, quite productive, for Trisolaris. One of the Sophons acquires an android body and lives on Earth as an ambassador named Tomoko. Humanity's mood changes once more. The Wallfacer, Luoji, becomes the sword holder, the person obligated to reveal Trisolaris' coordinates to the Dark Forest if anything goes wrong. Yet, in the eyes of public opinion, he is again a monster rather than a hero. Strange people, these humans, and why bother saving them at all? And so they lived in peace for almost 62 years. In the 61st year of the era of deterrence, Changjin awakens from cryogenic sleep. While adapting to the changes that have taken place over nearly 3 centuries, she meets a friend in the scientist IAA. They are destined for a long journey together. AA has discovered, in the system of the star once gifted to Changjin, 2 Earth-like planets suitable for life. Meanwhile, in deep space, the crew of Blue Space encounters fragments of the 4th dimension for the first time, disrupting the ordinary life aboard the ship. The 62nd year of the era of deterrence becomes its last. Instead of the aged and unpopular Luoji, Changjin is chosen as the new sword holder. Well then, the Trisolarans are good students. Having sifted through mountains of information on Earth's history and culture, they finally learn to lie and evade. And waiting, they have always known how to wait. As soon as Changjin assumes the position of sword holder, Trisolaris launches a large-scale attack on Earth. Because of Changjin's weakness, the deterrence system collapses literally within minutes. Dark times return for humanity. Had people already begun to consider Trisolaris a friend? They even refused to believe in the Dark Forest theory, completely denying the obvious. Meanwhile, the invaders wasted no time. They had even sent a second fleet toward Earth in advance, capable of traveling at a speed of light. Trisolaris' victory on Earth is easy and inevitable. But far out in space, the aliens are not so fortunate. The 2 probes, together with Gravity pursuing Blue Space, attack the human ships at the same moment that their brethren strike Earth. Everything seems clear enough. But entirely unexpectedly for the crew of Gravity, Blue Space manages to neutralize the droplets. How soft humanity has grown over the years. The crew of Gravity, holding a weapon of deterrence in their hands, still does not dare to do what their ship was built for. The people of Blue Space are quite different. These survivors of the Battle of Darkness do not hesitate for a single moment when the time comes to send Trisolaris' coordinates into the Dark Forest. Yes, Earth's location will also, of course, become known as an unknown enemy. But is a better fate awaiting humanity after conquest by the Trisolarans? Meanwhile, a new reckoning of time begins on Earth, the post-deterrence era. The peaceful ambassador Tomoko, once fascinated by Japanese culture, turns into a bloody dictator. The deterrence system collapses like a house of cards, and yesterday's friend reveals its true face. Far, far from Earth, the crew of Blue Space shows their colleagues from Gravity how they managed to prevail over an invincible enemy. Together they study a fragment of 4-dimensional space and find many fascinating things there. Alas, that space is in a state of collapse, and although the researchers managed to find traces of intelligent life, the time of the world they have entered is numbered. On the 60th day of the post-deterrence era, Earthlings notice the second Trisolaran fleet. It is moving toward Earth at the speed of light, and its arrival seems swift and inevitable. No one here yet knows about the transmission sent into space by gravity. 200 members of the crews of Blue Space and Gravity depart for Earth in a hibernation container. The second year of the post-deterrence era, or the year 2221 Anno Domini, Trisolaris begins its rule with all humans are ordered to resettle in Australia. As food, they are instructed to use their weaker neighbors. Tomoko, through her hired agents among Earthlings, methodically destroys the continent's infrastructure. Of the slightly more than 3 billion inhabitants of Earth, it is planned to leave only a couple of million. People realize in horror that they are being deliberately thrown back into the Stone Age. But then, dubious salvation arrives. Trisolaran devices leave Earth, and the Second Fleet changes course. Earthlings are allowed to return home from the reservation. What happened? Quite simply, the transmission from gravity has reached its destination. And so humanity smoothly transitions into the era of cosmic transmission. Strange creatures, these humans, as if they themselves had not just been nearly reduced to the level of primitive, starving animals in a cage and almost annihilated. Doubts about the dark forest theory creep back in once again. This time, however, the music does not play for long. The dark forest reveals its face, destroying Trisolaris in the blink of an eye. Luoji, greatly aged but not defeated, presses Tomoko for a way to protect Earth, but the android's words are vague. For Chengjin, however, Tomoko has a far more specific message. Yun Tiangming is alive and wishes to meet her. All this occurs in the 7th year of the era of cosmic transmission. That same year, the long-awaited meeting of Chengjin and Yun Tiangming takes place. Under strict Trisolaran supervision, the young man tells his beloved fairy tales. Encoded within them is a message to Earth, suggesting how to build ships capable of traveling at the speed of light. So why don't people heed this wise advice and leave the solar system? No. They cling to their small patch of known space until the end of the world truly arrives. In the 8th year of the era of cosmic transition, humanity decides to hide on the periphery of the solar system. Chengjin and AA enter hibernation to leap into the future. Saving humanity, after all, is not really their style. The era of shelters begins, lasting from the year 2333 to the year 2400. The author loves his characters. While others work on somehow forbidden engines based on the principle of space curvature, Chengjin and AA, after traveling around Earth, once again enter a long cryogenic sleep. When they awaken half a century later, all that remains for them is to flee into the universe aboard a ship equipped with those very new engines. Earth's fate is sealed. In the 66th year of the era of shelters, an alien ship is discovered in the Oort cloud. In the 67th year, the visitors discover the connection between Earth and the transmission that caused the destruction of Trisolaris. In the 68th year, the solar system is forcibly collapsed into two-dimensional space. This is the end of human history as we understand it. Only Chengjin and AA manage to escape. For them, and for the survivors from Blue Space and Gravity, the galactic era begins. Space curvature, distortion of time, the journey of Chengjin and AA in the real universe stretches over 18 million years. And yet, even in the dark forest, there exists a predator that uses the fundamental laws of nature as a weapon, which means that the only place to hide from it is inside a black hole, or in a so-called black domain, which was discovered on Earth shortly before its destruction. In any case, one of these, Young Tiangming, was precisely the gift he left to Chengjin, giving her the opportunity to live until the true end of the world. Still, who knows how many humans and non-humans are actually hiding from the predators of the dark forest in pocket universes. However, hiding forever will not be possible, and many billions of years later, Chengjin and AA will also have to emerge from the twilight. Will they survive? And do they even want to? The author seems to think that they do. There is one strange contradiction. In its attitude toward the cosmos, humanity displays astonishing naivety. On Earth, when entering a new continent, people destroy the civilizations that existed there without hesitation, using wars or diseases. But when we turn our gaze to the stars, we become sentimental and believe that if there are intelligent beings out there, somewhere, their civilizations live according to universal noble moral laws. Liu Cixin, The Three-Body Problem. From a curious, one might even say extraordinary, riddle grew a peculiar cosmic epic. Was the author right to stretch the narrative far beyond the conflict between Earth and Trisolaris? Was it worth extending the lives of the heroes of the third book all the way to the end of the universe as we know it? Each reader will find their own answers to these questions. We will only note that here, too, the main concern for the author is the conflict of human thinking and the influence of state systems on that thinking. Wrapped in a cosmic wrapper, what we see before us is yet another exposure of totalitarian systems of governance in certain earthly states. Well then, space is space. But for now, we remain human. And that's all from me. If you like this video, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell. Your activity is the best reward for me. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.